The Prime Minister has thanked Kiwis for helping day one of the lockdown run as smoothly as possible. As expected, the number of infections has jumped again. We have 78 confirmed new cases, bringing the total to 283. 27 people have recovered, with 7 patients in hospital in a stable condition. Meanwhile, prescriptions will now be limited to a 1-month supply, with some exceptions. Overnight, strict measures for returning Kiwis came into force. 8 have since been quarantined and 160 are being held in hotels. Our reporters are standing by with the latest updates. Kim Baker-Wilson leads us off.
Wendy, the Prime Minister today said it was like something out of an apocalypse. That's certainly what it felt like today and what it feels like right now. Normally this street would be bumper to bumper with people trying to rush home, to make dinner, to see their families, but of course, for the most part, they're already at home. Let's try to take you into the air now to see what it looks like from there. Yes, there are some cars still out on the road. Yes, there are still some people, but it's just a fraction of what it normally is. There have been pleas for days for people to stay home, to save their lives. Police have been ramping up their presence. So today was a test. Just how did the first day go and how did people listen to that message?
Dawn on a day like we've never known.
This is day one of how we go about responding to level 4 of the COVID-19 response.
The roads largely empty in Auckland, in Wellington and Christchurch. Eerie sights and silence. At sports grounds, big stores and bigger malls, transport hubs, parks, and around our most well-known spots.
This is rush hour in Auckland, and for anyone who's been to or has lived in our biggest city, it's quite a staggering sight. Normally traffic would be crawling along here at this time of day. Today, it's pretty quiet. And on Auckland's Harbour Bridge, normally 170,000 vehicles cross that each and every day, but not today.
People will be warned, people will be challenged.
Those challenges were on show today. People being stomped on footpaths and on the road.
If you need to drive there, you can't go there.
Officers even blocking the streets to ask questions. Police say they'll show compassion to anyone breaking the rules, and if that doesn't work,
We do have the authority to then detain them. We will prosecute people.
But people are allowed out for exercise if they keep their distance, some taking that up today.
We're keeping in mind that if we don't keep our distance and watch our hygiene, then we're putting others at risk.
Oh, it was a lot quieter, a little bit eerie.
But what about those staying in? We're filming this family from a distance.
Look, we're just trying to make the most of it. It's about being a bit patient and tolerant and kind, as Jacinda has said. So we're just literally 1 hour at a time.
That's how the Prime Minister's taking it too.
Everything, broadly, is running as smoothly as could be expected at this time.
Today was the first of many. The hope now that it keeps running smoothly.
And Kim, we've just had more details on the government response to the crisis this afternoon.
Well, in true Kiwi fashion, there are a lot of businesses offering to help during all of this, but all of that needs coordinating. So the Prime Minister announced today Rob Fife, the well-known businessman, will be helping to lead that coordination. His job is going to be standing alongside the Police Commissioner and liaising with the private sector. And also their task is to fish around and find ideas from the private sector to help fight COVID-19.
Kim Baker-Wilson, thank you.
We have a simple message for all countries. Test, test, test.
A simple message, yes. A simple solution, we're not sure. And certainly not all countries have been employing it. The fight against coronavirus has multiple fronts: testing, tracing infection chains, racing to create vaccines and treatments, or seeing what already exists and what could be adapted to treat the novel coronavirus. Joining me now is Al Edwards. He is a professor and immunologist at the University of Reading in the UK. Welcome, Al. Now, South Korea's method seems to be working. So why aren't all affected countries doing mass testing if they can?
It's a really good question. I think that the video you just saw gives you some glimpses as to why. Testing itself is a very valuable tool, but it's quite labour intensive and it has to be done really carefully, because if you do testing in a way that isn't properly and safely controlled, there is a risk that you can also spread the virus or put your health workers at risk when they take those samples. So it's a delicate balance and it needs a lot of manpower.
Well, because of the complexity of this task, we can imagine that not all countries are able to enroll this kind of mass testing. What would you recommend for those countries?
So I think that the most important thing is to spread the resource you have wisely. So what's really important is to, first of all, prioritise people who are in hospital and also healthcare workers, because these are the most vulnerable people and also the most exposed people. And by prioritising the use of your testing resource and by using that as smartly as possible, even if you have limited testing resource, it's still incredibly valuable and it gives you so much data and so much information about what's going on.
What about home testing kits? Could they help at all?
Yeah, so there's a number of different technologies and tools out there. These can even be as simple, I have one here of this little plastic cassette that could potentially be used at home. This kind of technology is going to be incredibly useful, but it does have to be used very carefully. So when you do a lab test, you have the best possible accuracy. If you do a home test, they're not quite as accurate, but they're more convenient. So you have to make sure that you use the best possible science and medical practice to use these tests effectively, rather than just using them without proper consideration.
Now, testing is, of course, one issue, but how much of an issue is, for example, global access to vaccines and treatments going to be? Are we in danger of seeing a first-come, first-served approach which could prioritize rich countries, for example?
Yeah, and I think that's already happening to a degree with testing even. The better off countries are getting first access to testing technology. And unfortunately, I can see the same thing happen with therapies. There's some really good news and some positive news, which is that people seem to be incredibly open to sharing the information they have about improved treatments, and that's vital. So everybody has that knowledge, but whether we can see the same sharing of resources, I'm not so sure about. Whether that's resource in terms of ventilators or when vaccines start to be manufactured, whether people will share them around, I'm not sure whether that's going to happen. We'll have to see.
Information sharing as well as resource sharing. It's going to be vital. Thank you very much, Al Edwards. He is a professor and immunologist at the University of Reading in the UK. Thanks for your insights. Now, vaccines seem to interest many of you as you've been sending us your questions in the last few days. Our science correspondent, Derek Williams, has some answers for you. Take a look.
The problem with developing any pharmaceutical product is that it has to go through an exhaustive testing process. With the vaccine, you first have to identify good potential candidates, and that went astonishingly quickly this time. Within weeks of identifying the virus and sequencing its genome, researchers began talking about candidates, but that's just the start. You next have to test your candidate for safety. Usually you do it first in animals and then in increasingly large groups of humans. But only after a candidate has proven safe do developers usually begin looking at actually how effective it is. And even if and when your candidate fulfills all of those criteria, you still have to ramp up production to manufacture hundreds of millions or even billions of doses. Now, there are ways to speed the entire process up a little bit, for example, by running some of those trials in parallel rather than one after the other, but that approach has drawbacks too, and that's why most experts usually predict that we won't have a vaccine ready to distribute on a wide scale for at least a year and a half. medications are, of course, important for limiting the impact of the virus on patients around the world, but long term, to defeat the disease, we need what's called herd immunity, and the best way to get that is through vaccines. If we don't develop vaccines, experts currently estimate that between 50 and 70% of us would have to get COVID-19 before herd immunity kicked in and stopped the pandemic naturally. But along the way, it could potentially kill millions of people. So a vaccine offers a safe alternative to achieving immunity in a large percentage of the population. An ounce of prevention is really worth a pound of cure. That's why, although treatments are very important, long-term, vaccines are even more so. A range of potential drugs that might one day help treat COVID-19 are being trialed around the world, but we don't really have many results for any of them so far. The World Health Organization is looking at 3 candidates in particular that have shown some promise. First, it's examining the effects of established anti-malarial drugs on coronavirus symptoms. WHO-sponsored trials are also ongoing for combinations of antivirals that have already been approved for treating HIV. And finally, one of the most promising substances is a compound called remdesivir. It was originally developed as a potential treatment for Ebola, but it didn't work out for that disease as well as hoped. Retrospective testing, however, showed that it did affect replication in the SARS virus, so hopes are high that it might also affect that pathogen's close relative, the new coronavirus. The best thing about all of these candidates is that most or all of the development has already been done for them, so production could be ramped up quickly if they did prove effective in these clinical trials. We should know soon if any of them work.
Now, India's Prime Minister has confined 1.3 billion people to their homes in what is the world's biggest COVID-19 lockdown. It comes as the nation confirms more than, I think it's 600 cases and 13 deaths now from the virus, and is expected to last at least 21 days. Well, joining us now is Al Jazeera English correspondent and former TV3 journo Elizabeth Puranam. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us. I think you're day 2 into the lockdown. How does that even work? 1.3 billion people.
Hi, Pippa. It's good to see you. So we have just finished day 2, but it's been a few days coming, because even before Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed that the entire country, 1.3 billion people, would be under lockdown from Wednesday morning, he made that announcement on Tuesday night. It did look like things were going that way. There was a voluntary 14-hour curfew on Sunday that was then extended to 10% of the country. All the districts which had confirmed cases, that then became 3/4 of the country, and now all of it. And that is simply because India does not have the public health system to deal with something, to deal with a major outbreak. And Prime Minister Modi said that the only way for India to deal with something like this, when other much more developed countries are really struggling to fight it, is to put the whole country under lockdown. Well, how does it work? It is working in some areas. I mean, you know, certainly where I live, and basically, you know that India is one of the most unequal societies in the world. And so those with homes can stay home, but we are seeing homeless shelters at the moment inundated with so many people in India are daily wage earners. They're poor. They have to work every day to survive. They've lost their jobs. They've lost their livelihoods. They're stranded. They're migrant workers. They work in different states to where they're from. And so, you know, they're completely at a loss. And where we are seeing crowds is where people are desperate, have nowhere to go, and there's no social distancing going on in places like that.
I mean, when we think about India, we think of so much busyness, just the hustle and the bustle. It must be absolutely surreal. I mean, it's strange here on the streets. It must be just so bizarre for you.
It's impossible to explain what it's like, Pippa, because as you say, you know, India, it's one of the most colourful places in the world. It also has the world's second largest population. There is never a dull moment. And right now, when you step out, it is just so eerily quiet. Again, most people are observing the lockdown. And so, yeah, I mean, it is really bizarre. You can hear birds, you can smell the flowers. The air pollution level has come down so much. Delhi is the most polluted capital city in the world. And, you know, right now, today, I saw that the air pollution level was actually good. It's never good. So it's all of those things, you know, I guess that's the silver lining to what is a very dark cloud looming over India as it starts really testing as it should have. Because, again, you know, the cases, the 650 confirmed cases, 13 deaths, those are just confirmed. India was performing the lowest number of tests among affected countries. Up until last week, it was something like 3 per million. And there are real concerns that the very low level of testing could be hiding the real scope of the problem facing India.
Is there any idea what that scope is? I mean, do you know how widespread the virus is across India?
Well, most states, most of the 36 states have confirmed cases. There are some estimates that India might have 1 million cases of coronavirus by May. We won't know until, again, this is why these next 2 weeks, these next 3 weeks of the lockdown are so important, because India has really scaled up its testing now. From only having 52 testing centres around the country, it's doubled the number of government testing centres. It's brought in private hospitals and given them certain guidelines. So we will know, Pippa, over the next few weeks. That's when we'll know what the real problem facing India is.
Liz, I mean, here we are. I think we're confident that we can keep this at bay. Is there that confidence in India? Because the numbers are just staggering. And the problems you identified earlier means there's so many challenges.
There are so many challenges, and even the Prime Minister himself will admit, again, you know, as I said, when he addressed the nation, he said that much more developed countries are not able to overcome this. And so that is why the entire country has been put under lockdown. And, you know, the way that it was done, it's really hurt the poor. We had the finance minister announce $23 billion worth of assistance for them, but that's, you know, for 800 million people. Again, that's almost come too late for so many that have been made homeless now. But I think the lockdown is the first step. The next few weeks of testing and them really preparing to treat people is when we have some hope.
Absolutely.
That they can get on top of this.
Liz, take care of yourself. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. Elizabeth Paranam there from Delhi. Here's one. Is gastro upset a possible first symptom before fever, cough and fatigue? I know you can't always trust articles, this is from Kieran on the internet, but some articles are reporting up to 50% of cases have gastro upset prior to developing fever, cough and fatigue.
Yeah, it's one of the symptoms that can present with COVID, but it's not the main one. Actually, the most interesting one we're finding is the thing called anosmia, which is you can't smell. And with that sense of loss of smell, you lose loss of taste. Now, it's not part of our case definition at the moment in New Zealand, but it's certainly a red flag that if you have those symptoms, that will make us think quite seriously about whether you've got the virus or not.
OK, so if you had an upset tummy now, should you be worried? Or what should make you worried?
Cough, fever, shortness of breath, loss of sense of smell, plus or minus bowel problems. The bowel problems are not a big marker. They are there, but they're not one of the ones we're using in our case definition. OK, that is good to know. What are the risks that products at the supermarket, Joanne asks, like milk bottles, cans, will have the virus on them? And as the virus lives on hard surfaces for several days, is that something people should be worried about, doing something about? Yeah, it's one of the ones that you need to be a little bit more careful with touching things that other people may have touched. The virus can survive for different lengths of time on different surfaces and different environments. So if it's really nice and warm and it's a solid surface, 5 to 7 days maybe. If it's a rubbish surface and it's either really cold or really hot, maybe 12, 24 hours. So just make sure you've got good hand hygiene. That's the thing which is going to settle it down. And don't go around picking things off the shelves and putting them back. Know what you want, grab it, put it in your trolley, then it's yours. That is good advice, and it's, again, hand hygiene, isn't it? Chris wants to know, can you please ask whether the constant wind in New Zealand, especially in Wellington, helps spread the virus by carrying the droplets further than 2 metres? No, I've got no evidence of that. Most of our evidence is, even the 2 metres, is in a quiet environment. In Wellington, if you drop something, it's in Cook Strait anyway, so it's gone before you even see it, so don't worry about that one.
So what we know so far is that the virus is not airborne, it's from touching surfaces or having the droplets directly on you.
Droplet spread only.
OK, can you please ask, this is from DK, about the message going around the internet about ibuprofen? People saying lots who have died have had it in their system. Is it OK to take it?
Yep, still okay to take ibuprofen. Some of these anti-inflammatory medicines, when they're in association with a range of diseases, may seem to exacerbate, that will make the illness a little bit worse. But then if you match that up with people who don't take the medicine, you get the same sort of result. So it's not a biggie. If you've got pain or fever, ibuprofen plus or minus paracetamol is still their first choice.
All right. Eugene says, I saw a number of shoppers using a handkerchief or scarf to cover their nose and mouth. Is that effective?
It's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. So no, the evidence we have is with surgical masks, which are a specific make of mask, and if we're doing really nasty things in hospital, a thing called an N95 particulate mask. But no, if you're going to hang a handkerchief around your nose, yeah, not a good idea.
No, and don't become dependent on that kind of thing, I guess. Just make sure you're following the advice. That is, wash your hands, isolate.
Wash hands, yep.
This is an important one, John. Can we still get flu shots during the lockdown? This is particularly for older people.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that we've targeted our at-risk population for influenza, because it takes influenza out of the problem. So we're saying anyone over the age of 65, paediatrics, kids who have had significant respiratory problems in the past, and anybody else that's had a significant health concern in an ongoing manner, we will vaccinate you. We've got enough vaccine in the country. Let's go and do it. We're setting up special vaccine processes in all our general practices. We want you and we want to immunise you, and we'll do it in a safe manner. What will get you in one at a time, stab your arm, kick you out. No 20 minutes sitting around, no waiting, get in, get out, get your flu vac, get it done.
So if you fall into that category and you haven't heard from your local medical practice, should you give them a call?
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to recall them all. There's a bit of a drain. We're booked up about 5-7 days in advance for it at the moment, and we've got all our nursing team and our doctor team stabbing as much as we can. But even if you're on the edge of those sort of medical long-term conditions, yeah, we'll do you.
And make sure you do, because that obviously would be seen as an essential trip in your car if you needed to travel to have that flu jab.
Absolutely, it's essential medical care.
And just finally, this one's from Lee, and this one's an interesting one. Why is it so easy and simple to kill the virus outside your body by washing your hands with soap, but so hard to kill it inside your body?
This goes on to exactly how viruses work. When they're outside the body, they are on their own, okay? And this virus has got an envelope around it, which is made out of fat cells, or fat proteins. And what we can do then is we can kill that off nice and easy. When the virus is inside your cell, viruses are fascinating. They're like little hypodermic syringes. They come into your cell, they inject their DNA into your cell, and then turn the cell around saying, hey, stop doing what you're doing, make me some virus. And so it's inside there, and it's using your own body processes, your own protein-making processes to make more virus. What a nasty little pathogen viruses are, and because they actually use our cells to make more of them. So to try and kill a virus, we have to kill our cells, and we can't do that.
John, that was, yes, devastatingly descriptive. Thank you. Thank you. And we do appreciate your time, Dr. John, for being with us. Our resident doctor, really appreciate you helping to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, we so do.
This is COVID-19 Pacific Update for Friday, the 27th of March. There are now 90 confirmed cases in the Pacific, including 1 death. Guam continues to be the worst hit, with 45 positive results, and a 68-year-old woman died after having multiple underlying health issues. On top of the 45 cases, another 4 sailors who were brought ashore from the USS Theodore Roosevelt tested positive. Guam's governor has asked the US for 1,000 testing kits. Tahiti is also grappling with COVID-19 with 25 cases. Tahiti Nui is about to temporarily ground its planes. Its last direct flight to Paris is this weekend. Vanuatu is the latest Pacific country to declare a state of emergency. While there are no confirmed cases, the island of Anatium is on lockdown after a tourist from a cruise ship who disembarked there has since been tested positive. The cruise ship had originally been ordered not to dock there. Blood tests from locals have been sent overseas for testing. The Cook Islands government has passed new legislation to help prevent any spread of COVID-19. So far, there's no positive cases there. Under the Act, the Ministry of Health has the authorisation to order supervised quarantine or isolation, and in severe circumstances can seize private property for use as a quarantine station. Anyone who fails to comply with the Act could face 12 months in prison and fines up to $10,000. Samoa, which remains coronavirus-free, is also enforcing strict penalties. Anyone served a notice by the police for breaching the state of emergency could be fined 200 tala or detained up to 3 months. If convicted, harsher penalties apply. No sea vessels are allowed into Samoa except those bringing in petroleum and gas or trade goods. Fishing boats are banned. A week-long fasting and prayer period ends this Sunday. Every family has been expected to take part from 6 a.m. to midnight every day. Tonga starts its national lockdown this weekend from 1 a.m. Sunday. There's a night curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. and everyone is expected to stay at home except to go out to buy essential food or get medical help. New Air's cabinet has held an emergency meeting and decided there are to be no more flights until at least April the 6th. NZ 784 from Auckland this weekend has been cancelled. The reason for stopping flights for a week is so that the island nation's logistics and needs can be worked out, including what necessary medical supplies are needed, and they can be all ordered and brought in at the same time. Our next COVID-19 Pacific update will be on Monday, the 30th of March. Stay safe.
There are 85 new cases of COVID-19 in New Zealand over the last 24 hours. This comprises 76 new confirmed cases and 9 probable cases. There are 37 individuals that we can confirm have recovered from COVID-19 infection. Currently, there are 8 people in hospital with COVID-19. 3 are in Wellington Regional Hospital, 2 in Nelson Hospital, and 1 each in Waikato, Auckland and Whangarei hospitals. 6 are stable, and 2 patients are in a less stable condition, one of whom is in intensive care. Our laboratories continue to work apace to process and report test results as quickly as possible, and over the last 7 days we have processed an average of 1,479 tests each day around the country. A reminder, anyone who has been tested and is awaiting their result should be in strict self-isolation until that result is confirmed. Of course, contact tracing continues for all those confirmed cases, and in addition to having additional staff in the public health units supporting that, we have our national operation at the Ministry of Health staffed by a range of health professionals that is increasing each day. We are still seeing a very strong link to overseas travel as well as to confirmed cases, so close contacts of confirmed cases. And there is a small number of clusters we continue to investigate. Those ones are on our website, no additional clusters from those we reported yesterday. So in summary, the combined total of probable and confirmed cases in New Zealand today is 368. Personal protective equipment. There's a lot of ongoing interest in not just our supplies, but the supply chain for PPE. We are just finalising and circulating updated advice to health professionals on the appropriate use of PPE when they do and when they don't need to use it to keep themselves safe. This will be on our website later today and circulated around to the range of workforces that need that advice. That advice, or similar advice, will also be provided for essential workers who may have contact with people in their day-to-day work and just what sort of precautions they need to take, both the use of masks potentially and of course hand hygiene measures. As I've said over the last few weeks, we have a national pandemic supply of PPE, and individual DHBs also have their own dedicated supplies. In the Ministry of Health National Reserve and in stores that are held in reserve in district health boards, we currently have 1.9 million aprons and gowns, 2.7 million pairs of gloves, and 60,000 sets of eye protection. And that is in addition to the 18 million masks that continue to be in our national store, half of which are regular surgical masks and half of which are N95 masks. On top of that, there's another 5 million or so out in district health boards. The Ministry is currently exploring all existing and a range of new avenues to ensure that we maintain our stock, and we have a range of very productive conversations happening, and that includes working with senior private sector people across New Zealand who have very good networks internationally. All stones are being turned over to make sure we keep our stocks at the levels that will be needed to protect our healthcare workforce and essential workers. 3 days ago, on the 24th of March, the Prime Minister, with the agreement of the Minister of Health, issued an epidemic notice under the Epidemic Preparedness Act 2006. Now, that notice unlocks the use of special powers by medical officers of health under the Health Act 1956 to prevent the outbreak and spread of COVID-19. That's the legal underpinning for the lockdown. And in addition to that, I've issued a national notice to activate Section 70 of the Health Act 1956. And since Wednesday night, that has prohibited large gatherings and required premises to be closed, with the exception, of course, of our essential businesses. There is more information on this on the Ministry's website, and more special powers may be used as the situation progresses, and the page on our website will be updated when they are. As you may know, we've put out a call to retired or currently non-practicing health professionals to support the COVID-19 response should they be required. And there's been a fantastic response there. More than 2,500 have registered already, and that number continues to grow. So as well as retired workers, we've had interest from people who are not currently working in clinical roles. For example, they are on maternity leave, and they are keen to help with the response as well. From today, healthcare workers will be able to register their availability on the Ministry of Health website, and we can then match them to roles that need to be filled in the sector. At the moment, that is particularly assisting with non-patient contact roles like Healthline and our contact tracing service. So in summary, these are unprecedented times for New Zealand and indeed internationally. We are all in this together. As I've said over the last few days, we do expect the daily number of cases to grow. We are testing to find those cases and to take appropriate measures. It will take between a week and probably 10 days before we start to see that number turn around. It will turn around if we keep doing our bit. Modelling shows, and there is a range of modelling out there already in the public arena, that the higher the level of compliance with the measures in place under Alert Level 4, the greater its impact will be on reducing our number of COVID-19 cases, and therefore the impact that will have in terms of hospitalisations and deaths. So I encourage New Zealanders as we go into the weekend may not feel any different from the week, given that most people are at home, but do continue to look after yourselves and your families. Do get some fresh air if you can, and be physically active in your bubble. Look after yourselves, your loved ones and your community. I'll hand over to Sarah Stewart-Black to make some comments now.
Thank you. I'd like to start with thanking everybody for staying home. Staying home, as you've heard, saves lives, and we must continue to do this. We have information from the police that generally people are doing the right thing. But we need for everyone to be thinking and acting more carefully about how they can stay at home to make a difference and save lives. There were some isolated incidents where there were reports of people congregating, and in these situations, those people were spoken to and provided with some advice about what the restrictions mean. The government is under no illusions that these Level 4 restrictions, while necessary, have a very real impact on people. These restrictions are dramatic, and a sudden shift in how we live, work and interact with each other. If you're struggling, you're not alone. We're working across government and with partner organisations to make sure that people get rapid access to what they need, help with finances, help with accommodation, access to healthcare and medicines, and connection to people in their communities. If you do need help, please reach out. We want to make sure that everyone has what they need to get through in the next few weeks. If you're concerned about someone, please check on them or reach out to government and community organisations who may be able to assist and advise. Please remember that even when we're at alert level 4, that the government and other agencies are still open and available to help you. Challenging as these level 4 measures are, adherence to them is critical. The better we do this, the sooner we can emerge from it. We have a critical window to save lives and make a huge difference to New Zealand's future. As Dr. Ashley Bloomfield has noted, over the coming days we'll continue to see the numbers rise. Hang in there. We know that these measures are the best thing we can do to break the chain of infection. We understand it places strain on you and your families, and the sacrifices that you are making will save lives, and for that we are all deeply grateful. In regards to income support, we would like to reassure work and income clients that regular benefit payments and superannuation will continue as usual. Work and Income are delivering services over the phone and online to ensure clients and staff don't have to have face-to-face contact. While service centres are closed, staff are still working to help clients over the phone, and the government helpline number to call is 0800 779 997. Work and Income will continue delivering essential income support and housing services, the new wage and leave subsidies for employers, and helping other essential services like supermarkets find the workers that they need. In regards to accommodation, the temporary accommodation service, which is run by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, is up and running. The service is working with other government agencies to assist in providing temporary accommodation to those required to self-isolate who can't do so in their own homes, both New Zealand citizens and people visiting New Zealand. People that need to register with the temporary accommodation service can call 0508 754 163, where a member of our team will help them with registration. The line is open 24 hours a day. There is a cost for temporary accommodation, and the service will work with each individual about how to meet this cost. If you're a New Zealand citizen or resident on a low income or benefit, you can contact Work and Income to see if you're eligible for support. If you're a visitor to New Zealand and need assistance to meet the cost of temporary accommodation, we recommend you contact your embassy or consulate for further assistance and advice. Finally, we know that things are really tough right now, and for people especially who are living with mental illness. If you don't live with mental illness, you may still feel really stressed or anxious by COVID-19, and this is completely normal. Reach out to your other supports over the phone or online, family, whānau, friends and workmates. We also recommend sticking to a routine, such as having regular meal times, bedtimes and exercising. But if you feel you're not coping, it's important to talk with health professionals. For support with grief, anxiety, distress or mental well-being, you can call or text 1737 free, anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to talk with a trained counsellor. Please don't hesitate. Thank you.
You never get free, lamb to the slaughter. What you gon' do when there's blood in the water? The price of your greed is your son and your daughter. What you gon' do when there's blood in the water? Look me in my eyes, tell me everything's not fine. All the people ain't happy, and the river has run dry. You thought you could go free, but that system is done for. If you listen real closely, there's a knock at your front door. You'll never get free, lamb to the slaughter. What you gon' do when there's blood in the water? The price of your greed is your son and your daughter. What you gon' do when there's blood in the water? admit you were toxic. You poisoned me just for another dollar in your pocket. Now I am the violence, I am the sickness. Won't accept your silence, beg me for forgiveness. We'll never get free, lamb to the slaughter. What you gonna do when there's blood in the water? The price of your greed, your son and your daughter. What you gonna do when there's blood in the water? When there's blood in the water.
Stay together. God forbid something happens and people get stranded without a car. Rick, we're stranded now. I know it looks bad. We've all been through hell and worse, but at least we found each other. I wasn't sure, I really wasn't, but we did. We're together. We keep it that way. We'll find shelter somewhere. There's got to be a place. There's got to be a place, not just where we hole up, but we fortify. Hunker down, pull ourselves together, build a life for each other. I know it's out there. We just have to find it. We're all infected. What? Whatever it is, we all carry it.
Over the span of 2,000 years, we have been given a collection of 66 books written by 40 people in various cultures, time periods, and languages. Today we call this collection the Holy Bible. Upon investigation, we find that these 66 books combine to form a message to humanity from a being outside of space and time by writing history before it happens. The Bible predicted the advent of the New Age movement and the New World Order thousands of years ago. It also tells us of a man who will rule this world empire and what his true intentions will be. All of this has been in the works for thousands of years, and it all hinges on Satan's ability to deceive mankind. The Apostle Paul in the 1st century AD wrote several letters to early churches, which are now called the epistles. The far application of these letters are a clear warning for us today. It is a warning of impending deception that will influence the whole world. Paul warns us of this deception in Ephesians 5, where he states, "Let no one deceive you with empty words." Then in his first letter to the Corinthians, he again tells us, "Do not deceive yourselves. If any one of you thinks he is wise by the standards of this age, he should become a fool so that he may become wise." In a letter to the Romans, he describes those who willingly live in lies when he writes, "Their throats are open graves, their tongues practice deceit, the poison of vipers is on their lips. For such people are not serving our Lord Christ, but their own appetites. By smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people." In a letter to Timothy, Paul clearly describes the world we see today when he writes, "The Spirit clearly says that in later times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons." In the second letter to the Thessalonians, Paul describes the New World Order and the Antichrist when he wrote, "Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. Don't you remember that when I was with you, I used to tell you these things, and now you know what is holding him back, so that he may be revealed at the proper time. For the secret power of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who now holds it back will continue to do so till he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will overthrow with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the splendor of his coming. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan, displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders, and in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. They are perishing because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth but have delighted in wickedness. The Apostle John, while in prison on the island of Patmos, had a vision of the end times and the deceiving entities that will walk the earth, stating, "And the great dragon was cast out, the ancient serpent who is called Devil and Satan. He who deceives the whole habitable world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. He deceives my own people who dwell on the earth because of the signs he was granted to do in front of the beast, saying to those who dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast who had the sword wound and lived." Jesus Christ himself gave his discourse of the end times when he stated clear warnings of the signs of the end. "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nations will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of the birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Christ,' or 'There he is,' do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. See, I have told you ahead of time. Jesus Christ died for the sins of all mankind. That means he died for the New Agers, the Freemasons, those in the Illuminati, the world elite, the Luciferians, the Satanists, and even me and you. God himself, taking on humanity, has given mankind a free gift of salvation and of true spiritual freedom. Now we all have a choice. We can live in darkness, allowing evil to enter our lives and unwillingly support the work of Satan and his fallen angels. Or we can let Jesus into our hearts and be spiritually saved forever. There are no prerequisites, rituals, or tests for accepting this gift of salvation. All one needs to do is ask honestly for Jesus to come into their heart. Remember these truths. God loves you, God cares about you, God wants nothing more than to know you personally and save you. Sin separates people from each other and God. Jesus died for your sins and rose again. You can receive Jesus now and know God's love right at this very moment. I pray for you all and hope the truth will indeed set you free. Thanks for your time. I think, in conclusion, I'd like to appeal to those people that have been researching this for any length of time, specifically long periods of time, maybe even years. To you, I don't think this is going to require a lot of convincing. I think that subconsciously you know that a lot of what was said here is true. I think that you have seen over the years a lot of conclusions about what the New World Order is and what their motives are. And I know that you know that it doesn't really explain all the loose ends and tie them all up. I think that you know, after kicking down so many doors in New World Order research and seeing those that truly expose the New World Order, this theme, that it is in fact theistic Satanism behind those doors. I know that you've seen that. You've seen that they are high-level occultists that really run this show and that are in the shadows. And that even those front men at the very tops are only front men, and that the real movers and shakers are those that hold very dedicated beliefs about the worship of Satan. So we even have this idea that somehow doesn't apply. We have a phrase that we'll say, which is, it doesn't matter what you believe, the fact is that they believe it, which sort of means, yeah, sure, they're all occultists at the top, but it doesn't really matter. They're just sort of deluded. And I think that's a very dangerous position, because if you actually are saying there that it doesn't matter, it's not actually true, there isn't really a Satan and there isn't really a power that they're serving, then we should just, again, think that this scenario has something to do with whatever we make it out to be. It certainly can't be about a cosmic war of good and evil, because we've already decided that that can't be true. Yet at the same time, we're pointing out that these people are knowingly worshiping Satan, which is something that the Bible has said has gone on from the very beginning. The kings and queens of all the old systems were always sacrificing their children to various gods and Moloch and these types of things. And they are still doing it today and are gaining power from it. The problem with believing that is it makes too much sense that all of this energy with the New Age preachers and teachers and truth movement icons and gurus are doing mainly two things. One, they're promoting this idea of a New Age coming in which you're going to be God and you're going to be evolved and all the obvious stuff that's preparing you for the system of the Antichrist. And the other part of that is they're telling you that Jesus isn't good, you shouldn't pay attention to him, or at least they're trying to misdirect you, tell him he's just this other guy, he's not really who the Bible says he is, or they're trying to discredit the Bible. There's only two things that these guys are doing. They're telling you and preparing you for the new system that you're going to think is your utopia, and then they're telling you to not pay any attention to the man that the Bible said would crush the one that these people at the top are worshiping. Does anybody see a problem with that? That we've been told what to think about the Bible and Jesus Christ by Satanists. The problem here is that what we've been told and what we've been prepared to believe is all what we would choose to believe. It's all very seductive. They're telling you that you can be as God. They're telling you that there is no real accountability for your actions, that anything that you want to do is good and normal and should be praised. These ideas are very difficult to resist. Truth really is irrelevant at that point, because we will fight to defend those ideas, regardless of if they are true or not. And that's why there's so many conflicting quote-unquote truths in the New Age and in the truth movement. You know, that's why the first thing that you're taught in the truth movement is that truth is relative. Oh, it doesn't matter, your truth is just as good as my truth. And we'll fight to defend this completely erroneous idea. I've got news for you. It doesn't matter what way the universe operates. The fact is that it does operate one particular way, cause and effect in a closed system. We are dealing with absolute truth. Maybe yours, maybe mine, but it is absolute, and it is one. We should be concerned about looking for the truth. And I suggest to all you researchers out there that you already have enough evidence to know that Jesus Christ is who he says that he is. You owe it to yourself to figure out more about him the way the Bible says that he is. Not the way that the New World Order says that he is, but the way the Bible says that he is. The Bible has been continually discredited. You're told not to listen to it. You're told not to pay attention to it. They do everything under the sun to keep you from it. They always have. So why don't you just realize that and take the time and figure out who is Jesus according to the Bible?